Good morning, guys. We're going to be using mole ratios this week. So how can a mole ratio be used to show the relationship between different parts of a chemical equation? The same as how different ingredients can interact in a certain recipe. So let's imagine a very simple cookie recipe. 3 cups of dough, 1 cup of chocolate chips. Written similar to a chemical equation. So 3 cups of dough plus 1 cup of chips are our reactants, and our 15 cookies are our products. So for every 3 cups of dough, we need 1 cup of chocolate chips in order to make 15 cookies. If we only have 2 cups of dough, this recipe wouldn't work. So what that can be seen as is filling in the table here. So for 15 cookies, how many of each substance would be consumed or produced? We would consume 3 cups of dough, consume 1 cup of chocolate chips in order to produce 15 cookies. So that ratio is 3 cups of dough for every 1 cup of chocolate chips would make 15 cookies. If we only had 1.5 cups of dough, we'd only need a 1/2 cup of chocolate chips. That would change our recipe. On this next slide, it's saying we could use the relationship in recipes to describe the interactions between ingredients and products. So you'll watch Super Cake and it'll go and break down recipes. So go ahead and watch them make the super cake and then the smaller super cake. Looking at our cookie recipe, if we were to make 30 cookies instead of 15, we would still use our original reaction up here. To figure out how much dough is required, we need a simple ratio of dough to cookies. So the dough to cookie ratio, not including chocolate chips, is 3 cups of dough makes 15 cookies. So here, to make 30 cookies, we would use 30 cookies as our given, use our ratio from the equation. 15 cookies is 3 cups of dough. You multiply the top, 30 times 3, divide by the bottom. Divide by 15 will give us 6 cups of dough. If we were to look at this from the chocolate chip standpoint, 30 is still our given, but our ratio now is for every 1 cup of chocolate chips, it makes 15 cookies. We no longer need the 3 cups of dough. So you'd put 30 as your given, and to cancel it out, you would need 15 cookies. So these will cancel, cookies and cookies, and you'll be left with cups of chocolate chips. But this ratio, again, comes from the equation. So 30 cookies times 1 is 30, divided by 15. 2 cups of chocolate chips are needed to make 30 cookies. When we're filling this out on our table, we copy our same ratio from slide 3. Then for 30 cookies, now it's a little different. For every 6 cups of dough, we need 2 cups of chocolate chips, which makes 30 cookies, which is similar and a more complex way of saying 3 to 1 to 15. For every 6 cups of dough, we need 2 cups of chocolate chips to make 30 cookies. So similar ratios, but more cookies than the 15. If we were to look at 75 cookies, 75 is our given, and we need to figure out what our ratios are. So for dough, for every 3 cups of dough, it makes 15 cookies. So our ratio for that again is 3 to 15. So same, you would put the 3 cups of dough for every 15 cookies. 75 times 3 divided by 15. And then you'll get your answer. So try that out. Then on the next one, we're finding chocolate chips. Our ratio is 1 cup of chocolate chips to 15 still. So you'll do 75 times 1 divided by 15 and input your answer. Using your answers on slide 8 here and the ones previously from slide 7, go ahead and input the ratio for 15 cookies, 30 cookies, and then 75 cookies. And look to see if you see any patterns between the different recipes or different ratios of ingredients. So we can also predict how many cookies, not necessarily how many chips and how many cups of dough, but if we're given 4 cups of dough. to determine how many chocolate chips are needed. So here, if we were to input chips, you'd have to do your ratio still. 1 cup of chips to 15 cookies. But if we have 4 cups of chips and only 3 cups of dough, that wouldn't work because we need 3 cups of dough for every 1 cup of chocolate chips. So we would need more dough also. You can't just have more of one ingredient. So if we were looking at cups of dough, 21 cups of dough, say we had 21, but we only had 1 cup of chocolate chips again, you could only make 15 cookies still because you only have 1 cup of chocolate chips. Maybe super doughy chocolate chips, cookies. So you plug in your given 21 cups of dough, you use your same ratio, 3 cups of dough, 15 cookies, and you plug it in here. Multiply the top and divide by the bottom to find your answer. We can use the same thing when applying it to chemical equations, similar to recipes. We use our coefficients to do our mole ratios. So you're going to do the same thing and plug them in on the next slide. What your mole ratios are, enter them in the equation, and see the numbers come from the chemical equation. Go ahead and try out slides 14, 15, and 16 before submitting.